that's the intro I just can't get enough of. And today is a Monday, so you know what that means. Well, at least up until last night, it's Walking Dead Day, as far as my little show. And today is the first day of the rest of your life. I think that was the first line spoken in the episode, or pretty close to it. So the big deal this week, Sasha. You know, I really put down Sasha's character. I think I see what they were doing with it. They were making her kind of the stato-depressed person, and that makes what she did kind of make a little bit more sense. Some good writing this episode. I think it was directed by Nicotero, but Angela Kang, and let me see, I think it was like a three-way. A three-way, that's interesting. But there was like this three-way writing thing. I think it's the writers. Directed by Nicotero, written by Scott Gimple, Angela Kang, and Matthew Negrete. So it's like the whole writing team was really in on this because it is the finale. It's episode 99. So now we're going to go into 100. So it's a, kind of deep. I got to say, I was proud of this one. It's really hard sometimes going to the setup episodes when they're not written that well. But it's, you got to love the characters and the acting job that comes out of, what's his name? Oh man, I got a bad memory these days. I used to know all these actors right off my hands. What's the one that plays Andrew Lincoln? I couldn't think of the first name. It was like Lincoln. You ever have that? Anyway, Andrew Lincoln. Oh, the way he plays Rick in this episode is gorgeous. It's beautiful. So, Negan thinks that he convinces Sasha to kind of join his crew, and he even negotiates with her a little bit. He says, I'm going to use you to get your guys to put down their arms. So the plan is to kind of bring Sasha along, threaten to kill her, and then, of course, Rick and everybody is going to just give up. Well, before that could even happen, when Negan rides up with a few trucks of his saviors, not too many guys, like 20-something guys, I think it was. It was definitely a lot more scavengers that were there that were supposed to be the ally, but they said they got a better deal. That weird chick that I can't look at. Okay, I got to admit, sometimes the Yoda talk is a bit entertaining, but it's also pretty irritating. And there was definitely a lot of them. Makes you wonder if they're going to be the big bad guys, like if they take out the saviors. That the scavengers will still be left, and they'll be an even bigger challenge. We'll see. If any of you read the comics, maybe you could give me a bit of a hint, so I don't have to go around, researching the comic book. Oh wait, I shouldn't have said comic book. It's what is it called? Graphic novel? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, back in my day, they were called fucking comic books. But okay. We could play that game. Be like that. So anyway, the scavengers betray them. And one of the important parts is Michonne is up, and she's, getting in the sniper position. I guess she's kind of replacing Sasha. Because, before she just whipped out her sword and killed all the dead, but now these are live people, so she's kind of has to find a new job. Unless she can start blocking bullets with her sword like Wonder Woman or some shit. She's now like kind of a sniper. It's like the second episode she's done that. So she's up there with one of the scavengers, and she goes to another building, and she's like, no, I'll go. And she doesn't really go. She kind of turns around and starts beating on Michonne. It's a, Michonne don't look too good, man, by the end of this. But luckily, she ends up throwing her off the building. So, dun-da-da. But Rick doesn't know that. So Rick's sitting there. Negan has, they've gotten in and surrounded everybody. They started shooting back, even though they have, they're surrounded and everything. Because Sasha, remember I said that pill would be important. I knew it was a plot device, because you don't pay attention to things unless it's a plot device. So she got that pill from Eugene, the cyanide pill. And a good chunk of the episode was her actually kind of, freaking out, running out of air, actually, and freaking out, and sweating up a storm. And she's kind of having this kind of conversation in her head with the first Abraham and then Maggie. I think the Maggie thing kind of goes back and forth. And she sacrifices herself, which gives, really makes her character finally worth it. She takes the cyanide pill, and she's been put in this kind of coffin thing, because Negan loves to make these points. And Sasha pops out of the coffin as a walker and attacks Negan. Now, I remember before saying it was going to go one of two ways. It was either going to be like this huge battle, and then at the end, it was basically going to be over. They're going to capture Negan and, maybe keep him alive, because I believe that's what they do in the comic books. But there was always the other one where it's just a start. So we're basically going to have to wait till, October, September, until the next season, and then we're going to get what happens as far as a war. Because now we knew they had allies. We knew that the kingdom was coming to help them, and we knew that Hilltop was, but you get a little scene before Negan shows up at Alexandria with them talking about, should we go? Rick told us to stay, so that Negan doesn't know. Negan doesn't know that Hilltop has flipped. But evidently Gregory's gone, so they think Gregory is already blabbing about them having, doing their own little rebellion, so it's a little too late anyway. So she saves the day. I'm talking about Sasha here. And she doesn't get Negan, but she doesn't get killed right away. She actually gets pulled off by one of the saviors, and she just rips his fucking face off, right? Like rips his throat out, rips his face off. All that beautiful Walking Dead stuff. There's a pitched battle, but the Alexandrians are way outnumbered, and they're some of them die, but most of them get captured. And they got Rick on his knees and Carl on his knees, and Negan's talking about how he's going to kill Carl now. And he looked pretty into it. That was a pretty good acting by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I think his name is. A very good casting for Negan. He really looked like he was going to love killing Carl, because he wound up that bat like he was going for a home run. Before that happens, though, Rick looks him in the face and says, "I'm going to kill you. You could take my hands. You could kill Carl. I am going to kill you." And you see just like this, the anger on his face. Like he does not doubt for 1 second that he's going to kill him. And Negan's always very jovial, always joking around, right? That's kind of his thing, hiding the fact that he's a psychopath, which a lot of psychopaths do because it works. And he gets a look on his face where he's about to snap. He's met his match in Rick, and he's not happy. So, while he's about to wind up, a freaking tiger attacks. Who could that be? Was it Sheba? Shiva? Well, now you know what happens, right? So they come from the back because, of course, the set is all based on like the front of the wall, the entrance, and that's where everything's happening. And then from the other side, like deeper within Alexandria, here comes Maggie and Hilltop, and of course, we're also talking about the kingdom. And it's kind of corny, but it really is kind of cool. Ezekiel spits out some lines like, Alexandria may fall, but today is not that day. Like he does some like Independence Day kind of shit. It's kind of cool, I have to admit. As corny as it is, I loved it. I do. I'm guilty. So there's this, they come charging in. It's very dramatic. I kind of teared up a little bit. They come in and just start bucking wild. Maggie's like fucking barking out orders, like phalanx to the right, and like she says some weird shit. I actually had to turn it on closed caption, and it was like something about a phalanx. I'm like, what the fuck is she talking about? She's getting fancy. And Negan notices her and goes, holy shit, the pregnant widow is still alive and she's kicking ass. So Negan's always kind of trying to pull these jokes, right? He's always trying to be the comic relief of his own storyline. And like I said, it's just that one scene with Rick when he really looks at him with like the deepest anger you could possibly imagine and says, I am going to fucking kill you. This is not, I don't care. Whatever you do, you better kill me because I am going to kill you. And we've seen Rick. I thought we were going to get one of those rip the throat out scenes that happened a couple seasons ago, where Rick just wasn't taking it no more. And that's why Rick is Rick, because when he gets to that point, most people just shut down. But Rick's character, no, he starts biting throats out of motherfuckers. So you kind of see that in him, like that's back. The guy that would go to any length to protect his people, especially Carl. So you see that back in his face, and once tigers started flying and ripping people off, ripping people's faces off. And this is one dangerous fucking tiger. Remember, this is like an oversized tiger, right? This is like a CG job, and you can't tell. But it's definitely not like your typical zoo tiger. It's bigger. And they do that on purpose. It is one intimidating fucking tiger if you're going up against it. So she just is hopping around killing people. It's actually pretty funny. Ezekiel saying all the king shit, which like I said, it's corny as fuck, but it is really entertaining. And you kind of get into it. You could see why this kingdom thing worked out. It's pretty inspiring. So the kingdom comes in, and also, of course, Hilltop, like I mentioned, with Maggie being the kick-ass, super soldier of the apocalypse with a baby bump. And everybody does pretty good, well, except for Eugene. He ends up going back with Negan. Negan escapes, right? He's got enough people to basically cover him, and he's smart enough to get, I think it's 4 or 5 of the scavengers on a rooftop, one of the houses right near the Alexandrian door. The doorway, the gate would be a better way to say it. And they're actually covering while everyone's leaving, but you see like the truck that Negan's riding away in, he's got his hand out with his finger up, like he's flipping somebody off who just cut him off in traffic. And he, you see like it's one of those 2-ton trucks, kind of like the World War II looking trucks, but the more modern ones that carry a bunch of soldiers, and they just have like a tarp. And you see like the bullet holes going through the tarp, just like tons and tons of bullet holes, because they're really gunning for him. Gabriel definitely steps up, and I think he was on full auto, just like, drilling this truck. So if there's anyone in the back of it, they're dead. But we don't see anything about that. But they get back to what's called the sanctuary. Now, since Burn-faced Philip sides, they're getting a little bit of information. And one of the things they learn is that the sanctuary is where Negan lives, that part of the compound where all the action takes place. Basically, the set they have for the Saviors is called the sanctuary. And he gets back there, and here's the thing. They pan out and they show a bunch of guys, right? And we're talking maybe 150 guys. They don't really show the edge of the edge of it, so you don't know how far it goes back. And that's always about as many people as I thought he had. I don't even know if that includes the scavengers. But the thing is, the thing with the Alexandria and Hilltop, like Hilltop, we know there's not that many people that are willing to fight, that know how to fight. I think it's only a couple dozen. But it looks like they were one of the biggest crews. Rick and his people, not so many people. And the kingdom, I thought, was going to have an actual kind of little army. No, they had like 11, 12 people. They had like a dozen people. They're just not spending the money on the casting, I really had the impression you saw soldiers training. And that was 8 guys that I'm not sure I saw the other 8 of them. There's only like 12 people, so you have the main characters like Morgan. Morgan's back into like killing for justice finally. But he always said, I'll kill if I have to, but if we could find another way, we should. But he's kind of like, I'm stuck, I'm broken, and Ezekiel's like, you are not stuck. Like, he's very inspiring. I see why he became the type of leader that he became. They really they do that writing well. Wish they could do more of the writing well like that. So I'm kind of perplexed at this. I mean, I remember seeing like groups of knights and a bunch of horses stand up with like one guy on one horse. Evidently, they lost their other horses. I know they had like a horse farm, I thought. They had a whole bunch of people that they're going to be coming down with swords and like spears or something. And like machine guns, It's, I'm a bit confused. Sometimes the show isn't so clear, and sometimes my brain doesn't work. But it seems like, weren't there more knights in the kingdom? Could have sworn. I know Richard died, but that's one. And Richard and Benjamin. Okay, that's 2. Where are like the other like 8 guys that should be on a horse? Where were all those guys who were like jogging around that I've never seen again? Did he just leave them all behind? Well, okay, evidently I was confused, or the show has kind of got like a giant plot hole where they didn't think anybody would remember, like, like that line of like soldiers jogging. I mean, it wasn't like an endless line of like a platoon, but it was like 8 or 9 guys. So it seemed a little silly that I didn't see like most of them come out. It was just kind of the main characters that went to the meets every time with a few red shirts. So I'm a little disappointed in that. Back in the day when Hollywood was at the golden age, when they did big movies, you could tell sometimes they were cheesing out, but the big movies would get like fucking tons of extras, and they'd have like, nowadays, like with Lord of the Rings, we had like these entire armies of CGI and these huge freaking armies, and the armies of the good guys were like, these huge armies. And yeah, it's post-apocalypse, so you could say there's not that many people, but they kind of foreshadowed a lot more people. So it's a little weird to me. It gave me an uncomfortable, icky feeling. But overall, it was a good finale. There was like a lot of drama. It was very emotional, Abraham talking to Sasha about sacrificing herself. And kind of smiling about it, like, hey, that's a good day. when you get to sacrifice yourself for your friends, it was cool in that way. The whole Sasha part of the story was actually, the better part of the story as far as emotionally and connecting. So hats off to them three writers for getting a good finale going. Now at the end of this, the war isn't over; it's just begun. All right, this was like the first battle. We don't know what's going to happen with the scavengers, if they're going to join Negan. I couldn't tell if they were kind of mixed in with Negan's little army. But you have Maggie, Rick, and now Ezekiel on on a stage talking to everybody. And while they're talking, the time that Maggie was talking especially, she was talking about Glenn and how Glenn's one decision to help out this stranger who was stuck in a tank in the middle of Atlanta, of course Rick, how that led to everything, how everything was just this good thing that Glenn did, and that she's just following his lead. And that was a very cool way to end it. And them three talking to their constituents, all the people, these rousing speeches. Supposedly, we don't hear any of it because you just hear kind of, Maggie talking in the background about Glenn. But you see them kind of stirring up their people. And it's going to be a fight, right? Negan he's a tricky little bastard. One of the things they had done is they had set up a truck to explode. And Eugene comes over and goes, if you guys lay down your arms, it would be the smartest thing to do. I don't want to see you guys get killed. And they decide to blow up the truck. And the truck is 10 feet away from him, so he would have died. But because the scavengers have betrayed them, they've already kind of taken apart the explosives. So it didn't work. So there goes their whole kind of, truck bomb thing. And that's one of the things that kind of made it like, oh, shit. And then they find out the scavengers have betrayed them because Negan gave them a better deal. I think they're getting people. Now, you think the scavengers, they live in a junkyard, so they, what they want to do is have all these people, all these, collect things, and, maybe they'll build, freaking mechs or tanks or whatever. But evidently they want people. So they wanted Negan to give him 12. And he said, I'm giving you 10. They tried to kind of welch the deal with him, too, a little bit. And he said, not 10. And he went, 10, yes. But they always try to push, just like they did with Rick. But for some reason, they need people. So they're going to be a very interesting kind of, what do they do to these people to make them sound like Yoda? These weird one word, and they're all like that. There's something fucking wrong with them. They must drug them in some way to make them retarded. There's something they must do to get the people to be like this. And I think that's going to be part of the story of next season. What are these scavengers doing? And I think they might end up being the worst bad guy. Now, if they would have stayed with Rick, because Rick kept saying to her, we had a deal. If they would have stayed with Rick, the Saviors wouldn't have had a chance, because they're seeming to be the biggest group. Not the smartest group, I'll say. They can only, speak in single syllables. But it makes sense since they have the largest compound, that giant junkyard, that big, huge CGI job. When Rick was on top, up. That's really weird. And I think what they do is they poison them. When they get new people, they put them through some sort of process where they make them like that somehow. But like lead poisoning or something. Or they make them eat brains so they get kuru. I don't know. I don't even know what kuru does, but there's something weird that they must do. And that's going to be a bigger part of the story, or they wouldn't have put that in. We're going to find out next season, like, what the hell is up with these weirdos? How did they get like that? And how do you make everyone like that? Right? No idea. Anyway, Michonne ends up throwing that. She gets attacked by one of the scavengers who's supposed to be her fellow sniper. And when she turns around and betrays her, they get into this huge fight, where she's like banging her face into the, onto the roof of some. It's actually more like a, what's it called? Like a deck, outside deck. And she's like banging her face into the floor. She gets all busted up. She looks like she went like 5 rounds with Mike Tyson. They really do a good makeup job with that. And she's all bloodied up. But Rick actually thought he hears somebody screaming, and he thought it was Michonne getting thrown off. Ends up that Michonne had thrown off the other girl. So she wins that fight. She's it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory, though. And it's kind of touching, the whole connection between Rick, Michonne, and Carl, and the little family they have. And a couple episodes when they're hunting guns. A couple episodes ago when they're, she thinks Rick is dead, and she almost just falls down and dies. Like she just can't handle it. It is kind of touching. I don't know in the graphic novels if it gets like that. So I think people who read the graphic novels, they still get a lot out of the show because there are differences, I've been told. And I have read one or two. So, you see Andrea's still alive when she's not supposed to be, that kind of stuff. So they've done a good job of kind of still taking the main story arc, but changing it up enough. So it's kind of worth watching, even if you're like a big, into the graphic novels there. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that they kind of turned around Sasha as a character, and she became kind of a noble, sacrificial lamb. And that was a good move for that character. Because otherwise, the character, like I said, every time I saw her, I was like, oh, God, her again. Just not, the writing wasn't very convincing. And Eugene, he gave her the pill, and Negan doesn't believe him when he says, oh, she died of asphyxiation. It must have been that tarp. They wrapped it around too good, and she ran out of air. And Negan's like, maybe. Maybe you betrayed me, though. So there's that kind of look of suspicion in Negan's face. And, he usually burns people's faces, when he's suspicious of things. So it's going to be interesting going into the actual war because Burnface, and if I ever call him that, because I can never remember his name, he's somehow on their side, but at the same time, he was with Negan when they went in, and he didn't shoot Negan or anything like that. Like, he hasn't betrayed Negan in any way yet. All he did was pull down some trees to slow him down. So he did what he said he was going to do to help them. But the plan they had, where they're going to take out Negan and his main crew, and then turn around, fill up the trucks, drive right into the sanctuary and take out the sanctuary. Well, that didn't happen. And Negan called in his outpost, it looks like. So he's got his full crew. And again, like I said, 100, 150 men. A couple of well-placed explosives. But you knew it was going to either go one of two ways. They were going to win outright, and all of Negan's forces were going to somehow be taken out. Or they were going to, it was going to be more of like a first battle of the war. And they went with the first battle of the war, which is kind of good, I guess, because Negan is a good enemy. He has this method he uses when he's turning people, and how he kind of keeps control of these groups that, anytime there's a rebellion, that's kind of straight out of like Machiavelli. He is very one-minded. He has a technique that usually works, and he's sticking to it. And he's got some tricks up his sleeves as well. So it's kind of, it makes him more of a good enemy. The governor's his whole thing was that he was pretending to be a good guy. So people didn't know what he was really doing. So once that gets called out, the game's over. Negan never pretended, right? He has that weird style of where he just kind of butters you up, jokes around with you, and then he'll like stab you in the throat if you cross him. And it's worked for him, right? I mean, remember, these are all survivors, so whatever Negan did is it's assumed that it's worked for him. So for him, that he can't turn back from that. I mean, look what he's done. What is he going to do? Join the priesthood? There isn't one, What is he going to do? I guess he could kind of run away, and that's about it. Kind of like the governor did. But people are going to track him down. Like, how far can you get? The people who have the cars are probably going to beat you. And if you lose big, you're fucked. So this whole thing where he gets kind of captured near the end and he ends up in jail, in the Alexandrian jail, and becomes kind of Rick's consigliere. Interesting and a bit foreshadowed if you think about it. Because in a way, Rick is the only person that made him stop smiling. That scene where he says he's going to kill him is the only time you see Negan's face turn serious, right? And that's not part of his thing. That's not what he wants to do. So it's, in a way, Rick beat him already. So I could see him kind of respecting Rick down the line. I think he already does. That's why when, I forget his name, was it Spencer? Was it that? I think it was. Remember the old lady who used to run Alexandria? Older woman who was like a congresswoman or something, and her son, and he's like saying, I should lead the thing, and he was like, no, I've kind of broken Rick. I want him, to stay the leader. He doesn't say that, but that's, kind of what that means, and he doesn't like a rat, and he sees that as kind of challenging Rick's authority as far as just being the leader, the cowed leader that he wants in that position. He spent some time and energy on that. So he's going to keep Rick there, and he guts Spencer. And it's there's a bit of a begrudging respect because there always kind of is between leaders. Like, yeah, you're totally not on my side. We're enemies, but we're both like in a different class. He knows Rick's in that class. So you could see him at the end, like, them playing chess and talking about how to take out the scavengers or whoever becomes the big bad guy. That's become kind of believable because this is the one person who's kind of beaten him. And in the ways I've mentioned before, not just in like the actual gunfight. So that's about all I have to say about that. Now we're going to, the show isn't the Walking Dead show. These are just the Walking Dead spoiler episodes. So what I'm going to do in the future, hopefully, I think April 12th, I think I remember. I could be totally wrong about that. I get my dates mixed up. But we got a big HBO show coming out. Speaking of cable, like AMC. Game of Thrones is starting up soon. I'm a huge Game of Thrones person. I love that show. And they have like a Talking Dead after the Game of Thrones too, that I've kind of gotten into. Because they talk about things that not necessarily that clear on the screen, but if you read the books, now, I'm one of those people that it's not that clear when I read the book either, because I skip around, or I tend to skip paragraphs if I think they're just kind of getting boring. And oh man, could Martin write? I mean, he could put down a whole lot of words that you don't give a shit about, and you're just hoping for the story to move along. And it's like every page is made out of like the thinnest ass tissue paper, and the print is kind of tiny. It's actually a little frustrating to read his books. I mean, there's so much in it. I mean, it's a lot of work. You got to respect it. But R.R. Martin is he verbose, let's say. But I love the show. Not that big of a, like I said, not that big of a fan of the books. I got to kind of skip around, and then it's just much better. But then I miss a lot of the details. So that show, I forget the name of it, that comes after Game of Thrones, kind of like The Talking Dead. That one, it's kind of fun for me to watch because then I get some of the details that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise, even though I've read all the books to date. So that's probably going to be the next show. Of course, there's movies, there's all sorts of stuff that I come by. I've recently actually bought Rogue One. You can't rent it yet in most cable. So I put down $20 on this shit because I'm just that much of a geek, and I had to see the Star Wars thing as soon as possible. And if you think about it, it's still saving money over the movies. So it's Rogue One. I'd give it like a kind of thing. I'm going to use kind of a compass, right? Wouldn't go with a thumbs up kind of north, but a little bit less than north. It was a little disappointing. It felt like the finale of a TV show, but with Lucas Arts doing the CGI and everything, like amazing special effects, just incredible special effects, like every Star Wars movie has been. I wouldn't say ahead of its time, but definitely using the top tier of special effects. And it's pretty. It's got lots of action. And it's got a good story. And now I'll kind of leave it at that. I'm not going to spoil it too much, because with movies, you just want to, tell people if it's good or not without going into the whole Siskel and Ebert, given the synopsis. That's a little too spoilerish. So I'd say it's more worth of a rental, unless you're a really big geek like me and you just love the eye candy. It's not going to be epic. It's not going to feel epic like the actual main storyline does with the main characters. So I would say wait till you can rent it, but it's definitely worth renting. Get it streamed over in your whatever cable service when they let you rent it for like $4.99 or $5.99. So if you can't wait, do what I did, or talk one of your friends into getting it when you're over at their house. One of those things. So that's today's kind of entertainment show. And now Walking Dead, you could see on the AMC app. Again, I don't work for any of these people. It's just some things I've discovered. Now Walking Dead, you could see on the AMC app. You could also get it on your Roku. You can get the AMC app. I know like a lot of, they don't put everything on the back of the box. You'd think they put AMC considering Breaking Bad and, Walking Dead, two extremely popular shows, but it's not always that obvious. But you can do it. It's pretty easy, actually. Of course, if you have like a Sony smart Blu-ray player, they got all that. You could probably get it on there too. And just, see the whole season if you haven't seen it yet. It's definitely, you might want to skip around with some of the last 6, I'd say. But it's worth it. So's Rogue One. And that's about all for today. And if you guys have any opinions you want to share, I look forward to your interactions. All right, good night.